Everybody, I call this meeting of council to order. Do we have a quorum?
7, yeah.
Yes, right, thank you. Now, I advise all present that audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the community via the City of Hobart YouTube channel. And for the purposes of the recording, elected members should wait for me to announce their name before speaking. And I request that all mobile devices are either turned off or put to silent, please. So we have a number of elected members present, but we do have some apologies. CEO. So the Lord Mayor, Councillor Coates, who's not here because of a COVID-related reason, and we have leave of absence Councillor Dutta and Councillor Sherlock. And is Councillor Fox? They're joining through via Zoom, but not there as yet. Right. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Bylaw people of Tasmania who have survived invasion and dispossession and who continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. I recognise the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice and pay my respects to elders past and present and to any Aboriginal member of the community watching tonight. Item 1 is confirmation of minutes. Thank you.
Deputy, in regards to the minutes, I'd like to seek that item 10 be dealt with separately. My reasons are that I believe there potentially may be a conflict in regards to meeting procedures. That's what point 1. And point 2, on the night, even though I consider there's a breach of meeting procedures, there was a motion put by myself which is actually added to part 10. If it's a motion, it actually should be a different numbered item. So I'm going to be voting against that particular item. If it's not moved separately, I will be voting against the whole minutes.
So just tell me the items. It's item 10.
Item 10.
Yes.
If you go to item 10 on page 10, you will see down the bottom motion, Zuko Barakis. If it's a motion, it cannot be part of another item. It was actually taken separately on the night, even though I am stating that it's a breach of procedure, but it's up to you as chair if you'd like to take it separately. If not, I'll be voting against it.
Thank you. I'll seek clarification first. We haven't got a live motion as yet. So, are you moving it apart from that?
Well, I'm moving it that the minutes are taken, that item 10 of the minutes are taken separately.
Thank you. To have somebody second that, please. Alderman Briscoe, thank you. And just for clarification, Mr. Jackson, could you just, is there any interpretation? Is Alderman Zuko's interpretation correct according to the minutes that you have before you?
So you wanted it to 10A?
Still going to vote against it?
Sorry, I was just waiting to hear from Mr. Jackson.
Through you, Deputy. I guess we might take that one on notice, perhaps.
All right. So, is the council? Thanks for joining us, Alderman Councillor Fox. So, is the council aware of the motion? So, everything, the minutes, apart from item 10. So I'll put that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Items carried unanimously. Item 2 is transfer of agenda items. No transfers. Item 3 is communications from the chair, and I'd like to Just stand and recognise the passing of Joan Fitzneed, AM. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of a community member, Joan Fitzneed, on the 3rd of April 2022. Joan made a wonderful contribution to Tasmania, but especially to the community of West Hobart, where she lived. Joan was a co-founder of the West Hobart Peace Park Community Group and was instrumental in asking the council to designate an area in the Forest Road vicinity to establish a park to commemorate the commitment of the local residents to peace. Peace Park was developed in 1986 during the International Year of Peace. For the past 30 years, Joan has been a tireless worker in a diverse range of community organisations, being a representative on a number of boards and management committees. Joan's community work has included being a trustee of the Tasmanian Peace Trust, co-founder of the Peace Park in West Hobart, and being instrumental in the declaration of Forest Road in West Hobart as a street for peace. In 1995, Joan received a Tasmania Day Medal for community service, and in the 2003 Australia Day Awards, she received the Australia Medal for her contribution to a number of health, social welfare and education services. In 2005, Joan was inducted onto the Tasmanian Honour Roll for Women for services to the community. Joan was a wonderful role model for the community and women, committing her life to advancing the principles of social justice. On behalf of the Council, I extend our sincere condolences to Joan's long-term partner, Carol, and her family at this sad time. And as a mark of respect, I request that the meeting observe a minute's silence.
Debbie, I wonder if I could say a few words before we do that about Joan, because she was a near neighbour, and I know a bit more to add to that.
Well, yes. Please be seated and we'll...
Thank you for that. If I'd known that was coming, I would have asked you previously, but Joan was my near neighbour when I lived in Forest Road. She lived opposite me, so I had a deep and ongoing relationship with her in the sense of her Peace Park work, but people don't realise the significance of her career as well. She was a nurse first, and then she was an educator. She also started, when I was working at Elizabeth College as a teacher, she started a unit there for young people who needed special help. It was one of the very first ones at a college. A very significant person in terms of developing that educational section of the college system. She also had a deep affection for animals, particularly dogs. And I remember going to help her open a memorial to dogs in war, and also helping her getting money for the statue, the peace statue there in the Peace Park. She will be missed because the number of times she's rung me up and said things like, "Jeff, if you don't ring me back, I might be dead." So sadly, she has lived a long life, so it's not as if it's sad, but it's not tragic. But I do know the community around Forest Road will miss her because she was involved in every issue to do with West Hobart, and I know she was a lifelong member of the Labor Party and started the West Hobart Labor Party branch. So she will be missed from the members of the community as well as myself.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to add any comment? I believe she also ran for council at one stage. All right, so if you'd like to stand, we'll have a minute's silence to recognise the death of Joan Fitzneed. Thank you. Please be seated. This to Carol as well. So item 4 is notification of council workshops. Item 5 is public question time. Are there any questions, CEO?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. We do have questions this evening. We have two. One from Nathan Wolf. Is Nathan here this evening? Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Chair. Hello, Council. Thank you for your time. And my question is to the elected members. I'm an avid watcher of the Council and committee meetings, and across the recent months, a trend of behaviour in the meetings have been increasing. These behaviours have been disrespectful and not conducive to positive debate. I have witnessed disrespectful behaviour towards the Lord Mayor and the Deputy Lord Mayor who have chaired these meetings. They are often talked over, their rulings are disregarded, and in general, spoken to in a poor and disrespectful manner by, in particular, Alderman Briscoe and Alderman Zuko. This has been raised previously in a question from the public that I have not noticed any change or improvement or conduct of senior elected members. This comes across as ignorant of the concerns of the community and detracts from the good work of the council. My questions are, what is in place to address this lack of respect and to improve the standards of behaviour in a modern council? And my second question, will the elected members hear my and others' concerns over the state of debate and be more respectful and adhere to the standing orders more than they have in recent meetings? Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for your questions, Mr. Wolf, and I'm going to take your question on notice and provide you with a written response in due course, and a copy of that response will be published in a future council agenda. Thank you. Any further questions?
Deputy Lord Mayor, we have a further question from Louise Elliott, who is here this evening. Thank you, Louise.
My question's to the Council. The Central Hobart Precinct's plan discussion paper states that a potential future direction is to support and facilitate the relocation of the University of Tasmania to the CBD. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines support in several ways, including to argue or vote for, to promote the cause, and to keep something going. And it defines facilitate as to make it easier to help bring about. My questions are, what evidence is the Council relying on to form the view that UTAS's relocation to the city is in the interests of our city and the community, and where can the public access this evidence? Does the Council think it is appropriate to state that it will support and facilitate UTAS's move, given this very strongly implies that applications that come before Council must be supported, given the Council has already predetermined that it will support and facilitate UTAS's move, and voting against these applications is not in keeping with this direction? What commitments have the Council made to UTAS about their relocation, including those made in meetings that the Lord Mayor has had with the Vice-Chancellor over recent years? How does the Council respond to the strong and warranted perception that the City of Hobart Council is applying favouritism and not treating UTAS like any other individual or organisation? Does the Council agree that UTAS is like any other organisation or individual with no special rights, privileges or influence when it comes to the future direction of our city? And finally, what actions must another individual or organisation take to achieve the same level of support from the Council? For example, if a large tourism, hospitality or retail operator wanted public statements made by the Council that it will support and facilitate their intentions, what does that individual or organisation need to do? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms Elliott, and as we received this rather late in the day, I'm going to take those questions on notice and provide you with a written response in due course, and a copy of that response will be published in a future council agenda. Thank you. Any further questions?
No, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any petitions?
Not this evening, Lord Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Item 7 is consideration of supplementary items. Are there any supplementary items to the agenda?
There are none, Deputy.
Okay. Item 8, indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest.
Yes, acting. Yes, Deputy. Item. Sorry, I had it before and I just lost it. Item 13. I'm going to declare an interest on item 13, even though I don't have to. I'm doing it just in case someone wants to have a crack at me.
13, was it?
Item
Thank
13.
you. Councillor Harvey.
Item 12. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor.
Oh, okay.
I'm not on the committee.
No, no,
No more? Okay, thank you. Item 9, council is acting as a planning authority. And 9.1, 720 Sandy Bay Road, Sandy Bay. And I ask Alderman Barakis to introduce the item.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and I'm moving this one, given that you're in the chair.
We have a seconder. Alderman Briscoe, thank you.
Thank you. It's 9.1, 720 Sandy Bay Road, alterations to the chimney. I'll move that one, Deputy, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Further discussion? No further discussion?
I might actually just
You-
speak now then. Lord Mayor, the officer's recommendation of this was to approve this development. I know the committee had a long discussion around this, and we deferred it earlier to try and find an amenable solution, because we do have a situation where our neighbours very strongly asserting that they'll be negatively impacted by this chimney, and we do have obviously the officer advice with us that sort of says something to the contrary. It's not one that I'm happy to be voting to support, but it is one that I think, you know, whilst there is definitely some history between these two neighbours and some animosity there, and we've had a whole lot of information given to us, and I think not all of it is necessarily relevant to the planning considerations. There's probably been a bit of business going back some time on this, but we need to look at this just as a planning application. And from my interpretation of this and from reading the officer's reports, I see this as one that does fit in and comply with the planning scheme. So I would be supporting the original officer's recommendation. I think it's, we do find ourselves in a situation where we're kind of stuck between a dispute between two neighbours, and we need to be careful about how we act as a planning authority in these situations and don't get involved in said disputes. So I'll leave it there, Deputy.
Thank you. All right, if there's no further discussion...
I just have a question, Lord Mayor, through the CEO to the appropriate officer. If council supports this motion and not the motion, not the recommendations as per the council officers, would the council officers be able to defend this on behalf of council if the matter went to tribunal?
Mr. Benoit?
Through you, Chair, council officers have made the recommendation inconsistent with council's position, would not be required to defend the council's position. However, myself as director and the CEO would ensure that we had qualified advice to support the council's decision before a tribunal.
Thank you. So I'll put... Alderman Thomas, do you want to speak? We've kind of summed up, but if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, look, thanks, Deputy. This is a really difficult one, because at the end of the day, the neighbour at 720 puts in an application after they've constructed a chimney. The chimney's going to, my understanding, the chimney's going to be a wood-burning chimney, and it's very close to the neighbour involved, and obviously there's been a huge amount of animosity between this particular couple or these two residents, and it is a really difficult decision, because the reality at the end of the day is that at any stage, if we actually refuse it on grounds against the officer's decision, the officer's recommendation, we put this council to cost. This is a classic case where conciliation has failed, amicable relations will probably never be restored. That's only my personal view, of course. And it is, as Alderman Barakis said, it's a rock and a hard place decision. It's a very difficult decision, because you actually have a pollutant burning activity right next to your deck. But our planning officers have recommended that the application be retrospectively approved. So it's very difficult.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to put the motion, which is for refusal from committee. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
Show of hands. Those in favour?
Alderman Briscoe and Deputy Lord Mayor.
Those against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas and Councillor Fox. That's lost Deputy, 2 votes to 6.
Okay, so Alderman Barakis, you're wanting to foreshadow a motion. Is that
Officer,
That's
recommendation.
Just moving it, I think.
yeah, I'm just wondering because you moved the original motion. So,
I can move.
all right, thank you, Alderman Zuko.
I'll just move the officer recommendation as reported to committee.
Thank you, seconder. No, you can't second
Oh,
it.
I can't, okay.
Can I have somebody else second it? Alderman Sexton, thank you. Is there any need for discussion? Okay, well, I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? No.
No.
Show of hands.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Fox, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas,
Those against?
Briscoe and Deputy Lord Mayor. That's carried Deputy, 6 votes to 2.
Thank you. So that item is carried. Now we move to City Infrastructure Committee, item 10, and I call on Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Acting Lord Mayor. Item 10, petitions, Hague Street and Augusta Road, Lena Valley road safety concerns.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis.
The council's received petitions with regard to both of these areas, and I'll just read through the recommendation. Number 1, mobility improvements be investigated for Augusta Road and Hague Street as part of the overall local area mobility plan. Part 2 of that is priority be given to Lena Valley local area, to the Lena Valley local area mobility plan. Part 2, petitioners be advised of the outcomes of officers' findings as outlined in the report. Part 3, a further report be prepared outlining the local area mobility plan processes and timeframes, and that part 3 is important as well because we would like to know how long this will take, when it will start and when it will be completed. But I will say, with regard to the Hague Street one, I went for a drive prior to the meeting and I went up Hague Street off Augusta Road and I was nearly cleaned up by a car coming around the corner. So I witnessed exactly what the people in this area have concerns about. So yeah, from that moment I thought, okay, yeah, this is a dangerous corner, but we also need to be logical in how we proceed with this, and rather than push anything forward, the committee decided that it was important for this to be part of a broader process with regard to the lamp, and that this area be the first cab off the rank in order to show our concern for that particular area and for the petitioners who have asked for action in those areas.
Thank you. Further discussion. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Deputy. And as Councillor Harvey said, this is one and that is a particular issue and a safety issue that the residents have brought up. I'm a member of one of those Facebook groups, the Lena Valley Community Group, and this is something they've been going on for quite some time and raising the safety issues here. So it is problematic to do this immediately. It doesn't really work, but to have this as our first priority, I think, is only reasonable, and hopefully we can address that safety issue as soon as we're able to.
Thank you. Further discussion? There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Item's carried unanimously. Item 11 is Federal Street, North Hobart footpath trees.
Move the item, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Harvey, thank you.
Federal.
Can I have a seconder? Alderman Barakis, thank you.
So item 11 is Federal Street, North Hobart footpath trees. Lord Mayor, there's been some lifting of the footpath by the trees in this particular street, and a number of options were considered with how to deal with it. There's probably 6 options that were looked at, but what it was decided is that for now there needs to be remediation work to make it safe for pedestrians, and that part 2 of the recommendation, the future management of trees in the streetscape be considered as part of the North Hobart precinct plan project plan for this year. So there's some other potential options we could look at in this street for resolving the issue of trees lifting footpaths and where we want to have trees in the future. But to do it as part of the precinct plan makes much more sense than just do it as a standalone project. So we'll sorted out for the short term, and then in the long term, once we get into the precinct plan, we can have a look at how that street should really function and where there should be trees or not.
Thank you. Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, I support this motion, but I have got a question. In terms of, there is an audit of all footpaths according to the motion I had earlier that got passed earlier this year, to do with e-scooters, and I notice there are many footpaths that have got this problem, similar problem. What is the state of the audit, through you, Deputy, to the CEO?
Thank you. So through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, to Alderman Briscoe, we are working on a range of those matters pertaining to that notice of motion that you put forward regarding scooters. I'm not sure of the particular time frame at this stage around the audit. I'd need to seek advice from officers on that. So I'll need to just take that on notice and provide advice to you in writing.
Thank you for that, through you. I imagine the audit, to be safe for pedestrians, means probably safe for e-scooters too. So I presume when the audit has taken place, then it will identify where the trees and their roots are having an effect on the surface. I know in Goulburn Street it's particularly bad. So that would be correct, that the audit would cover off those sorts of things?
Through you, again, Deputy Lord Mayor, I would need to check absolutely that with officers, because there are audits that do look at the extent of things sometimes at a surface level and sometimes beneath the surface in terms of that, subsurface infrastructure. So I would need to seek advice on that, just to the extent of the audit that's being undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Deputy, look, I do support the motion, but I don't support the motion. I've actually taken a very good look at this street, and I'm with Alderman Briscoe. There are some serious problems in a lot of areas with trees uplifting and damaging our infrastructure. You just got to drive down the bottom end of Burnett Street and you'll see trees and footpaths and gutters up. This has been an ongoing situation, and if you actually, if elected members had taken the time to actually take a walk down there, you would have seen there's a government-owned building there that's already got cracks in it. Now, I believe that if you can already see cracks from the lifting of roots, that means that there is definitely roots going towards or close to that building or pushing onto that building foundation. Now, I understand that the committee decided that we look at this in a future date as part of the North Hobart precinct plan, but I don't believe that it's acceptable. So I believe that we need to make some amendments here, or potentially it goes back to committee. But I would like to ask that item 1 be taken separately, because I do believe there's an immediate and urgent concern with the pedestrians there. I've provided the council with video of pedestrians actually falling over, and that was provided to council staff. I don't believe that 2 is appropriate. I believe that we need to further investigate this as a matter of urgency, and in particular that the building that's I believe it's government owned be also looked at and investigated, because if it's happening there, it'll be happening at the next building as well, because the footpath there is also up. So I'd like to delete 2 and change it to that that insofar as the Federal Street footpath on the right-hand side, that an immediate investigation be undertaken in respect of whether or not the buildings are potentially being damaged by these trees, and that action on this particular part of Federal Street, when you look at the gutters and everything, they are damaged. That the council seek to do immediate works to rectify this problem. Now,
so your
I'm seeking immediate action. Basically.
So your amendment is
I'm amendment 2, yes, Deputy.
to seek immediate action.
Yep.
And we want an audit of buildings.
I want an audit of the buildings and the routes immediately. Now, the council officers may have conducted that, but look...
Sorry, do we have a seconder for that amendment?
Yeah.
Alderman
Look,
Thomas, thank
Deputy,
you.
if I can elaborate a bit further, I have seen that a number of times, in particular the time when I was actually provided the video of the person falling over at one of the points, and when you actually have a really good look at the building there, I can't remember if it's owned by Tas Police or they lease it or something like that. It's a bluish type building, but you know, you can see 2 hairline cracks at the bottom where this tree is. Now, to me, I'm no Einstein and I'm no professional person, but I've been around the building game quite a long time, and I believe that could be potentially caused by the roots. And I'm aware the owner next door has also contacted me in respect of their concerns in regards to their building as well. And I think when these concerns are raised by property owners, you know, leaving it until this may happen at a later stage this year, I think is one thing we shouldn't be doing, and I'd like to see immediate action and works in respect of this.
So just for my clarification, so the first part says that the remediation to make it safe for pedestrians should occur.
My concern is the pedestrians walking there first and foremost because of this video, but my second and main concern is the damage to our infrastructure. If you have a look at the infrastructure there, it's actually, I'd say it's lifted at least that much. The gutter is already damaged, the footpath is damaged, and there's damage going towards a building. To me, I don't believe this should be left. I believe this should be acted upon as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. CEO, would you like to just give some clarification on this, please?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and I know that a number of officers have undertaken some significant analysis of these trees, and certainly John, in his role, had provided previous advice to the executive on this. In terms of taking it forward, the recommendation was really around looking at the bigger picture as it relates to street trees more broadly, but recognising the intent of the recommendation here was to actually undertake immediate works in the event that they were required. So I do think that that is what's before you here, but I'd take advice from officers who may like to provide any clarification. But my understanding is that what Alderman Zuko is proposing is not inconsistent with, in fact, what's being recommended here.
I see. Thank you. Mr Fisher, would you like to, is it to you to add anything there?
It's a long line up here, Deputy Lord Mayor. Through you, Chair, you're quite right. That was a consideration that was undertaken by roads and by other culture when we looked at the initial proposals for treatment of these issues in Federal Street. And you're quite correct. We have considered the damage to building. We found that's not correct. We don't believe there's any damage to the buildings, but importantly, in resurrecting or reforming the footpath, that work can be reconsidered, and a further engineering assessment can be done when we've reformed the footpath, which gives us a better idea of where the roots actually occurred.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, I've got a question. I've been trying to understand the new structure that the CEO kindly provided to us. I had to write it out because I couldn't print it out from the hub. I'm just wondering whether we've lost something in the new structure. Does it come under the city enablers, manager city infrastructure? Does it come under the manager smart and sustainable city? Does it come under the manager of bushland waterways? Does it come under head of the city projects office or the manager that design services? Or in fact, does it come under Invest Hobart? There's no...
That's your question?
It's a question that somewhere we used to be able to say, oh, city trees come under this, but I can't see any mention of where the infrastructure, city trees all come together.
CEO, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you for that question. Again, into our new structure, and certainly, as I've said to you, Alderman Briscoe, it's one of those structures that is new and we're still bedding it down, and we'll do a sense check of it within 6 months of its implementation. But it's fair to say, in terms of responsibility, the overarching North Hobart Precinct Plan sits within Katie Cooper's remit, and that's the Director of City Futures. John's role is still what was essentially his substantive role. It just, however, has picked up the areas of waterways as well, which essentially we had a separate manager for, that was stormwater, as you probably recall. That now sits under John's area, as well as bushlands. And also there are elements of maintenance and so on concerning trees that sit within Tim Short's area as the Director of City Enablers as it relates to maintenance and so on. But the overarching design of street trees going forward is a combination of City Futures as it relates to the higher level planning for place, which is very common across the country, particularly the City of Melbourne and the City of Sydney and other such areas. And John's area is still very much concerned with bushland and waterways, and maintenance continues to be run in the same way it always has, by the depot under Tim Short's area. Thank you.
Okay, just a supplementary question. So if I had a phone call tomorrow from someone who lives in Goulburn Street, do I then refer them to the city's futures, the connected city, or the city enablers, or the city life?
CEO?
Thank you. Well, under our new arrangements that we're putting in place that we have talked about before, there will actually be a councillor support function, and that will be a central email and a central phone number where all of those matters can actually be triaged, as is the case with a lot of contemporary councils. It's not expected that individual staff would need to respond to those. They are triaged in a way that gives you the most timely response back to you to let you know when the matter will be followed up and what response has been provided to the constituent in that regard. So these are the sorts of system improvements that we're putting in place as we speak. So I wouldn't expect that you'd need to necessarily ring John to follow that up, because it would be triaged through the councillor support system, and one of John's staff would have it as a priority to follow up in that regard.
I can't see that. That's sorry, I'm sorry to...
So councillor support's not listed on there?
It's not
no.
Listed. So at the moment I would have to go to a particular director. There are 7 there.
You would come straight to my office, actually,
okay.
if that would be
Thank
helpful.
you. But all 7 down there could be involved. Yeah, thank you.
So did you not want to speak to the motion?
Oh, I think I've spoken, Deputy, when I asked the initial question.
I thought they were questions. Alderman Zuko?
Yes, in regards to my amendment, if I may have the pleasure to actually change the wording, and that was in regards to the thing. So I'd like to amend it in this way: that 1 remain, 2 remain as it is. The CEO actually convinced me just then, and 3, that the council officers consult with the landowners immediately adjacent to the trees in question, insofar as any potential property damage. So that way there, if there is or is not property damage, the landowners are consulted, because I believe there will be.
Alderman Thomas, are you happy with that change to the amendment?
I'm not sure whether or not accidentally it's been negated, in that what if the owners are consulted through you, sorry, Chair, don't you want something done?
Well, and a report back to council, okay? For action. Yeah, for action, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Thomas.
Right, so you're happy to support that? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I suppose I've just a question. If the routes were to cause damage, as Alderman Zerko was suggesting, to neighbouring properties, would council would be liable for that, wouldn't they? Mm. I think. Well, then in that case, I think then what's being suggested in the amendment's entirely reasonable. I'm not sure about the. Can we just incorporate that? Does that have to be an amendment?
No, it has to be.
Has to be an amendment. Okay, well, I'll support the amendment then.
Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Councillor Harvey.
Speaking to the amendment, I get the amendment, but I was also assured by Mr. Fisher that it would be looked at during the process of remediating the footpath. That's correct? Through you, Chair? Yep. So but Alderman Zuko, you're not satisfied with that response? You'd rather it be a separate item in this motion?
Yes,
I've been
please.
asked. As has been the case over the years, if it's in the motion, it happens. Nothing disrespectful to any elected member or the CEO or anybody, but if it's something's in the motion, we've always discussed, it happens. But if it's not in the motion, sometimes it does get lost.
And just to
Councillor
follow
Harvey?
up on that, so this will be done. Also, so you've double whammied it. So the first part, the footpath gets remediated. We would have consulted anyway, true or not? So we would have found out the same problem, but we're just clarifying it in the final part. Okay, well, I'll support that. Yep.
Any further discussion on either the motion or the amendment? If not, I'll firstly put the amendment. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Amendment's carried unanimously. It becomes part of the substantive motion. Would you like to sum up?
Just briefly, we did do a thorough, or the officers did a thorough job looking at all of the options for this street. And it might be that these trees don't belong on that footpath in the future. They might belong down the middle of the road. So the preliminary designs indicated that whatever you do, there's going to be an issue with regard to size and, you know, lanes and bike lanes and all the rest of it. So for now, the best solution is to keep these trees where they are. And once we get into the precinct plan for the area, it might be that we come up with a much better design for Federal Street that will alleviate any problem with lifting footpaths. It might be that we end up with trees in the middle of the road, but that's to be decided through the precinct plan. So anyway, yep.
Okay, could become the Paris end of North Hobart. You never know. So we have the substantive motion. I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? Items carried unanimously.
Declare
Item
an
12.
interest.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. And I'll call upon Alderman Barakis to move this, please.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'll move item 12, Tas Networks Transformer Relocation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Alderman Briscoe, thank you.
Thank you. The motion is to advise the petitioners that there's under the Electricity Supply Industry Act, I think it might just be best to read it. The Council's agreement to the proposed work is presumed, and there is nothing in all the circumstances that displaces presumption, and therefore the City of Hobart does not actually have the power to refuse or stop Tas Networks installing a pole-mounted transformer in Pillinger Street, Dunedin. A further report be provided detailing the development of a policy that addresses works by Tas Networks and other utilities that may impact on the city's infrastructure and amenity. And part 3, a process established with Tas Networks to map out their future plans for infrastructure upgrades in the City of Hobart to negotiate good visual and community outcomes, particularly in heritage and high bushfire risk areas. And a further report be prepared in relation to mitigation projects and the protection of vulnerable assets in high fire risk areas. Chair, this was brought about by some residents that were unhappy about a transformer going up on the pole that would have had a high visual impact. And there was a pretty long discussion with representatives of Tas Networks, and it really does come down to us, council, not really having the power to tell them what they can do on those sites, and them informing us that the cost of what was being asked to do by the petitioners was disproportionate and would have ended up with that cost being passed on to others, either to council or to in the form of power prices. So they've agreed though to continue to liaise with us and consult with us about future infrastructure, but ultimately there isn't a whole lot that we can actually do here other than encourage those conversations.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Look, I'd like to thank the petitioners for bringing this to council with their concerns, and whilst it's quite frustrating from the petitioners' perspective, there's not much change to the outcome, because it's really beyond council's power to refuse or stop Tas Networks for installing this pole-mounted transformer on Pillinger Street. But what this motion has done, as Alderman Barakis has said, is that through good discussion at the committee meeting, we're seeking consideration of both bushfire and heritage for better community and visual outcomes, better discussions with TAS networks, and also it asks how vulnerable TAS networks' assets in high fire risk areas may be protected. So that's information which I think is really valuable to suburbs around our bushfire prone city. So I think the information that is forthcoming because of this petition in the first place is quite useful for council to make further decisions. All right, so no further discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried unanimously. Can we get Councillor Harvey back, please? And we go to item 13.
Fair and interest.
Thank you, Alderman Zuko.
Swapping out with the menu.
City of Hobart Grants Program, update on review of City Partnership Program. I'll call on Alderman Sexton.
Yes, thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. I'll move the motion as it appears on the books.
Can I have somebody second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
This is a sensible approach in the immediate post-COVID era. It also allows council, through its new arrangements with staff and structure, to have some time for all this sort of thing to settle in, Acting Lord Mayor, and it also, of course, most importantly, gives some security to the event organisers that they will have funding for at least another 12 months while we are as a council considering it, and while they as an organisation consider what they want going into the future.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yes,
Briscoe.
I can support this motion because all these events are absolutely superb. Just that I wonder if we could include in the motion the table on page 14 of the report, where it just indicates the dollar amount which has been indexed. So it's the first time I think we support these events without a dollar amount. So I thought we should have at least acknowledgement, because that will appear in the report. So the amendment I move that the dollar amounts that are on page 14 of the committee be attached to this motion.
Thank you. Seconder, Alderman Thomas. I think that's pretty straightforward, and I did notice that myself.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll put the amendment first. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Amendment is carried. It becomes part of the substantive motion. Did you want to sum up, Alderman Sexton?
No, thank you, Acting Lord Mayor.
Thank you. All right, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Item is carried. Can we call back Alderman Zuko, please? Thank you. So item 14 is Salamanca Market Bylaw 1
Yes,
of 20.
thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. I'll move it in accordance with
Can I have somebody second that? Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
look, there's not a lot to say about this. Basically, we're just going to be advertising for a further public consultation process regarding a bylaw with respect to Salamanca Market, and delegating the authority to do so to the Chief Executive Officer. And then if there's no comment of any substance that's received, then we are authorising the Chief Executive Officer to take the remaining necessary steps to make the bylaw to enact the market.
Thank you. Any discussion around this? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Items carried unanimously. Item 15 is a special report from the CEO. It's a petition requesting public meeting from Save UTAS.
Deputy.
Alderman Briscoe, can I have somebody second that, please? Alderman Zuko, thank you.
The only comment I have is I wonder if I noticed that it suggested that the meeting happen at the town hall, and in the era of COVID, we've had previous public meetings in the city hall, and I think it's probably more important to be able to have space. Particularly, I imagine a lot of the petitioners who do attend this meeting will be more senior, more elderly, and probably. So perhaps the question I could ask is there any barrier at a later date after you discuss with the petitioners through you, Deputy, to the CEO, that the venue could be changed to the City Hall? Because my indication today, talking to the lead petitioner, that they'd prefer the City Hall because of the COVID reasons, and also the number of people anticipated to go to this meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and through you to Alderman Briscoe. I'm happy to take that on notice, and we'll discuss that with those meeting organisers going forward, albeit that it is our public meeting, of course.
Yes.
And I do note that we've only just started to work with the Department of Health around the transition away from the use of the City Hall for other purposes, COVID related. So I will take that on notice. Thank you, Deputy.
I wonder, thank you for that. I wonder if we could just give, then the motion does say Town Hall. Could we someone, because I've moved it, I can't change it, but could someone move an amendment, or City Hall?
I'm happy to do that, because that was also my concern, because given that there are 1,398 or something like that, petition is 1,398, does the Town Hall, is the Town Hall capable of accommodating 1,398 people? So if it's not...
so seconded by, the amendments seconded by Alderman Barakis. CEO, would you like to answer that?
I'll just take it on notice.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the answer is no, and accordingly, then I think it's very wise that we have an option which we found last time this happened. We needed.
Any further discussion?
Yes,
Alderman Thomas.
Chair, it's purely my convenience, but the Monday the 7th is already, I've got something that evening, is an important thing. I mean, it's only one person, but is there some fixation on Monday the 7th?
Of May.
Of May, yes.
7th is a Saturday.
The 9th, I mean, whichever day. Yeah, the 9th. Yeah.
Still have that clash?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, that's two aldermen from here alone. Is there a clash? So is this fixed in concrete?
Through you, Deputy, we have an absolute drop dead or deadline of the Wednesday, the 11th of May.
How's the Tuesday?
I think we look through you, Deputy. We arrived on the 9th of May as being looking at the automatic elected member calendar and other commitments and the
only
venue
concern
availability. So
Just hear him out, please.
I'd finished.
You're finished. Okay, there you go. There you go. All right, Alderman Thomas. Alderman Thomas?
In that case, it's just that people rightly expect to see the elected officials at these things, and they make contrary comment when there's only a few there, and it may be that we can't be there. Sorry?
It's only ever been one.
Two.
Can we just hear Alderman Thomas out,
Yeah,
please?
look, it's just a request. Look, I'll sit with whatever decided, but if we can do the Tuesday, that's perfect.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, I'm actually with Alderman Thomas. Look, may I suggest not a straw poll tonight, but the elected members are advised 2 or 3 dates, and see when the majority can turn up. You know, I've been advocating that for a long time, so that you know, if there's a majority of elected members available on a certain night, well, that's where it goes. So I think that's the best way to approach it. Now, I'm happy to move that as an amendment, but I'm also happy for the CEO to take that on board, and Mr. Jackson, because I think that's the democratic way to do it. Give us 3 dates, and we'll elected members respond by a certain date.
CEO, would you like to respond to that, please?
Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Look, I'm of course happy to take all of these matters on notice, and I will provide advice to elected members in writing of the logistics around the ability or not to do that, and necessary arrangements going forward. And I just remind elected members that we have recently done a poll for that very purpose, in fact, around attendance at certainly workshops. So happy to look at that, but I do just advise, Deputy, that there will be some logistics involved in this, of course, and we just need to make sure that we've got arrangements in place in a timely way. So I'm happy to take it on notice and provide further written advice.
There was a potential workshop anyway that night. So, Alderman
just a
Briscoe?
clarification, does the motion have to be changed to give you flexibility then?
No.
Because it does say in the motion to be held on the night. So we do need an amendment to give you some flexibility.
We do have an amendment before us.
Well, the amendment, yeah, we've got an amendment, so we could include it in the amendment. So on the 9th or the 10th or the 11th? No later than the 11th.
So can we have the amendment read out, please, so that everybody's quite clear and we've captured everything? Good point, Alderman Briscoe.
Through you, Deputy, the amendment at the moment has amended part 2 of the recommendation so that at the end of it, it reads at the Town Hall or City Hall. And
So you want that before, and have 3 dates to be considered.
Make a suggestion through you, Deputy.
So if we have those 3 dates. Elected members. Could we have
Deputy Lord Mayor, I'm happy to do that. I just would caution just around the logistics. So I just say again, I take that on notice. We can certainly minute that from the point of view of the motion if it gets up the amendment to include 3 dates for council consideration. That's fine, as long as it falls within the statutory time frame in which that meeting needs to be held, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Perfect.
Yep, just would it thank you, Deputy. Would it be potentially tidier to have it at a date no later than, and then give you some flexibility rather than have specific times?
So, Deputy, that would certainly be helpful from an officer perspective, because as Mr Jackson's rightly said to me just now, we do have an advertising requirement as well. So that would be helpful. Thank you, Deputy.
So, just to speak to that and the issue of the venue, I think, firstly, I've got a question. We've asked you a few questions and appreciate that you've had to take them on notice because we're throwing them at you right now. These will come back to us. The answers to these questions will come back to us before the event, and we'll be able to actually incorporate that into whatever decision making.
Deputy Lord Mayor, will circulate this advice outside of session via email.
Thank you. Look, thank you. I think the Deputy. I think the comments that have been made are entirely reasonable, especially that around the venue. As Alderman Sexton said, I think it is entirely reasonable to expect that, for a range of different views, this meeting will have a pretty high attendance. It's an issue where there's a lot of passion in the community, for and against. So it's one that I think you would be able to expect there'll be a lot of people there, and I'm not convinced that the room next door will be able to accommodate all of them. So I think City Hall would be the more appropriate venue. And as to the time, I'm quite flexible for Monday or Tuesday, but I think it's best that we do that at a session and give the CEO the ability to do that on the fly, and just make sure that we have it before the date that we need to have it by.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the amendment first. Those in favour? Aye. Those against?
Just clarification, the amendment did include 2 dates, did it, or before the 11th?
Before the 11th, yes.
Yeah, a date prior to the 11th. Yeah.
Yep, okay, so we're clear on that. It becomes part of the substantive motion. I'll put that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Items carried unanimously. We now come to item 16, which is the closed portion of the meeting.
Yeah, I so move, and thank you very much for the chairing of the meeting this evening.
Thank you, Alderman Zuko. Seconder, Alderman Barakis. Those in favour? Those against? Items carried unanimously, and that closes the open portion of our meeting. So thank you.